Before we start the podcast, I really want to thank our sponsors, 16 co-working spaces located in Marsa. They have really good facilities, amazing snacks, water, showers, desks, double monitor setups, anything you can think of. Really good location. And also they gave us 15% discount for whoever's watching the podcast or listening to the podcast. You can see the code here, which is 16CW16 Charlie Whiskey. I'll put it in the description as well, so you can check out their website. But they have really good prices. With a discount, it's even better. And I'm really glad to be partnering up with them because the podcast got so much better when we joined the forces. And now we move to the podcast. Thanks, Frank, for coming. Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome.
Oh, man, like Mitchell, the guy who was before you on the podcast, he was like speaking highly of you. So I was like, and obviously we met before. I already had interest, but when Mitchell was like, you need to get the Frank on the podcast, I was like, yeah, I need to, you know.
Well, hopefully I don't disappoint.
No pressure.
He's raised the bar, like, you know, he I listened to it actually not too long ago, and yeah, there was a few lovely words from him with regards to me. So
no, I think he loves working with you. He loves learning from you.
He's a good guy. He's great.
Yeah. So I really wanted to talk to you. Obviously, Let's do the introduction because Mitchell did a very short introduction. So
absolutely.
Just a couple of sentences, you know, because obviously I want to talk about the photography and how you got inspired to do that and all the stuff that led to it, because there's always a path that's very interesting.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily started with arts even, you know, like.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. So far away.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so Frank Farrugia, Farrugia, I should say.
Farrugia.
Yes, I keep in my mind having to correct myself because I can hear Mitchell saying, say it the Maltese way. I'm like, okay. So born in Australia, if the accent wasn't obvious. So born in Sydney to Maltese parents, mum and dad, Maliha and Gozaton actually. So I'm a bit of hybrid, a bit of both.
You have best of both worlds,
so to speak. Yes, depends on who you ask. Yeah,
that's true.
I hear. And you know, very typical Maltese story. They migrated in the late 60s, I believe, and so did my mum's parents as well. So they, you know, did the whole grass is greener, you know, migration over to Sydney. It was either Sydney, you know, so some of the family went to California, some went to Canada, some, you know, the very, very typical.
I heard Sydney, Australia in general, they had some sort of better conditions for Maltese to immigrate just because it was part of United Kingdom Union, right?
Exactly. So look, I don't know the exact bits, but basically Australia was after skilled labourers, or sorry, not even skilled labourers, but, you know, labour. They needed a labour force obviously Australia is, you know, much younger than Europe, like, you know, much younger. Our history doesn't, you know, go back 150 years, you know, whereas you walk in the streets and most of the houses are older than that, you know. So so basically because we are part of the Commonwealth, you know, through you know, the Queen, bless her soul. I'm not a monarchist. I just felt the need to say that. But
she died recently.
Yes, unfortunately. She was a cool kid. But there was obviously some sort of exchange with the government, so residency and you know, even I'm not sure if there was citizenship, but basically my parents became citizens anyway when I was quite young. I think when I was at least maybe 10 years old. So you know, there was.
So it took some time.
So
for them
yeah,
to get
absolutely, because there was also at the time, this was I believe this was pre-EU, and what would happen is that if you became a citizen essentially from for another country, so my dad becoming an Australian, I think at the time you had to essentially forfeit your Maltese citizenship.
So it's one
it was one or the other at the time. So you know, my dad waited until he was very sure, I guess, and you know, but then obviously with the EU that was reversed, so you can actually now be both. So
okay, when did you start not questioning, but when did you start being interested in your roots? Because obviously, as a kid, maybe you didn't really care what Malta is.
No, I mean. I did, but so I'm the youngest of 4.
Oh, big family.
Yeah, well, ish, you know. Well, at the time there was no television.
Dad really loved mommy.
Well, we'll get to that.
No, I mean, for kids, that's a lot, man. That's
yeah.
a lot.
Oh, for today's world, that's just like, how can you even afford that? You know, like that's, it becomes such a monetary thought process when you're having kids and you're like, oh my God.
I have one and I'm not sure about the
well,
second
exactly.
one.
I want a dog and I'm not sure if I can afford a dog.
That's true, yeah.
It's, you know, I think obviously it was a very different time, and with Malta, like Malta was always around me. Like, you know, even going to my nana and nanno's house, like, you know, I still see those like 3D little frame things of the church in Malika, you know, popping off, like those little sort of 3D, like, I don't know how to describe them, but they're hand painted or something. Okay. They're like these souvenir frames, right? Like, you know, it was like walking around my parents' home and my grandparents' home. They had all these like little icons, or
that remind you of Malta,
religious or non-religious icons that were saying something about Malta. So, but I think, and you might agree, I don't know, but it wasn't until I was until you get older, you start, you know, questioning your roots and, you know, where did I come from, and, you know, who are my family? Like, literally, I've been in Malta for about 1.5 years now, and I'm discovering family that I never knew existed. Like, my nonno's brother alone who's I think still alive, and he's like 93. My grandparents are 91 next month. He had like 18 children. Yeah, obscene amount of children. So, you know, 8, and I think they lost a few as well, like in that period. So, you know, so it could have been more. But
those are the odds, I guess.
Well, you know,
a lot of times, especially back then,
and even now, you know, these things happen, and. But yeah, so when you think about the amount of like second cousins and so forth, like I've just discovered, I've only met like 2 of them at the moment, and there's you know, coming from when I was younger and being able to count my family on one hand, to then coming to Malta and obviously being in weddings and wedding photography, which we'll talk about, like the whole concept of, you know, there being 900 people at a wedding just is, I don't know, 900 people. Yeah. But when you think about it, with 18, you know, kids on one side, and that's only on just one person.
But that's extreme.
That is the extreme. Yeah. But then when you start to understand why there's 900 people at a wedding now, because you're like, okay, well then, you know, or your second cousin, that's already 400 people. Yeah. You know, that's just the closest family and friends, you know, and their kids. So, so Malta became. I've always had this. I was always drawn to Europe in terms of wanting to either live here or work here for a period of time in my life. And even my friends, remind me sometimes, saying that, Frank, you've been talking about this for the last 10 years. You've always wanted to. Australia it's Australia's home, but it's also, there's somewhere else for me, and I don't know where that is yet. It could be here, but it could also be somewhere else.
But I feel it's a very natural kind of need to have to explore the different parts of the world, right? Like, I mean, I had the same. Maybe I didn't really want to go to another continent.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but maybe to live in another country. That's why I went to study to UK. Then I ended up in Malta, been a bit in Norway. Yeah. So, in Europe, but I still moved around. So I feel like every young person wants to explore the world. And if you don't have that passion to go somewhere, I feel like there's something wrong with you, probably. Or you're just so comfortable.
Yeah,
that you don't want to go anywhere.
Firstly, thank you for considering me as young. Because I was like, kind of less. Thank you. I still think I'm young in my head. I'm not sure about the body and the mechanics of the body, but especially also being in Australia, just the positioning of Australia to the rest of the world. It's hilarious when I say I just got back from Australia, maybe a month ago now, and one way was 33 hours, and just chatting to people and saying, I just got off 4 flights, and I've been traveling for basically 2 days, and and for me, I'm just totally used to it. I actually love it because it means that most of the time my phone doesn't work.
That's true,
and I just love.
It's like a mini vacation.
It's a mini vacation. It's not the most comfortable vacation because you're
because you're not flying like Emirates or something.
No, and one is not flying business just yet. But although
going there.
Oh my God, I got upgraded once. Swiss. Oh my God.
Swiss Airlines. Did they go to Australia?
Well, it was one of the legs to Australia. Okay. And actually, no, sorry. I was meeting now my ex-partner in New York. So it was Zurich to New York. Oh my God. And I woke up because I think I might have been snoring a little bit. And like as soon as I woke up, I had the best 8-hour sleep in my life. And I got some looks, from the other passengers in business class. So I'm like, I think I might have been snoring. I was passed out. No.
Oh, dude, listen, come on.
No, when I'm asleep, I'm dead to the world. I could sleep through an earthquake, I think.
So you're not a nervous flyer, I guess, just because you've flown so much.
At the beginning, I was. The thing that got me the most was turbulence. That's the only thing that still I'm still that person that just at the beginning it was very, very abrupt, but now it's just I'm going to just hold on to the support just in case.
That's gonna definitely
cool,
help.
Calm and collected. That's literally purely psychological.
Why I'm asking, because I'm a nervous flyer, and I had to fly to Sydney also.
Yeah, you did.
Frankfurt to Shenzhen, I think.
Yeah,
China,
so it would have been China.
Because we used Southern Airlines.
Yep.
Like yellowish plastic in the plane, and it wasn't the greatest experience.
No, can imagine.
But yeah, I mean, I remember Frankfurt to China was okay. It was 12 hours, I think, or 14 maybe.
It would have been
pretty long.
It was either.
But it was fine. There weren't much turbulence, and then we had a domestic flight in China from Shenzhen to Guangzhou or something short, 1.5 hours. Go down. And then that to Sydney,
which would
for
have been
11 hours, I think.
10, 11. Yep.
And bro, when we were crossing the equator, the turbulence that we got, I think it was because after I researched a bit about the levels of turbulence, so I think we were in the mid-level. Not the lowest, It was moderate turbulence.
It was reasonable.
And it was constant for 20 minutes. and my palms, I shit you not, the sweat was like running down my palms. Like I've never had that.
Holding on.
I was
for dear
literally
life.
like a cat, you know.
Yeah.
Nails in.
It's
It wasn't pleasant. People were actually like, I've heard a few people like, you know, like screaming just because of the shake.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not the only one on the plane who's nervous probably at that point, you know.
Yeah.
And my wife's just sleeping next to me. Like she doesn't even...
It's just like, just rocking her to sleep.
She was like, you know, it's like going on the off-road with the car.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And after I researched a lot how the planes work, what pilots would consider dangerous, what's not dangerous.
Yeah.
Obviously, what we had wasn't dangerous. They just changed the altitude a bit. So they went out of that zone where it's shaky.
And then...
You know, but at the time I didn't know.
No,
and
of
I was
course
like,
not.
we're fucking,
like,
you know, going down.
you start praying to gods and deities that you didn't originally believe in.
Exactly.
Just in case.
You start believing in all the available gods.
Yeah, anyone hear me?
Anyone's online.
Hello?
But yeah, my brain works like that. I need to research things to understand them, and then I don't get frightened by them anymore, you know?
Yeah, I'm quite impressed that you actually, did that research.
So now I know
turbulence.
quite a lot how the plane works, how the takeoff works, how the landing works, what happens
Look
in the air. So now I am a bit less stressed just because I know like if the plane, starts going sideways, I know exactly what the pilot is doing. He changed the course on the dials,
Look at you.
So that helps me process the fear of flying.
Of course it does. Well, knowledge is power, right? So can I ask you, would you ever take that further? Would you ever consider
flying?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I would love to try maybe just a Cessna, like a two-seater.
Yeah.
Obviously with a pilot, just to take it over in the air, just to feel how it reacts to the movements, to the yoke, all that. I mean, it's interesting. Or a simulator. Simulator could be
I'm sure
better.
you would have to do a lot of simulation hours before you could even do...
Exactly, yeah. But even a simulator would be interesting. I mean, just because I understand more, like I said, then that fear becomes interest.
Exactly.
In a subject, right?
Yeah.
And I know aviation is the safest way to travel in general,
It is, obviously.
Like with the car, there's much bigger chance you'll get smashed by someone. in Malta in particular.
Viva la Malta!
But...
no, it's... you're absolutely right. Like, so the turbulence was the only really thing. A funny story, actually, when I was... one of my first ever flights. So I don't know if you'd have them as well. You'd probably just call them something different here. But there was a brand of motion sickness tablets. We used to call them Travel Calm, or they're called Travel Calm, I should say. And Travel Calm. And it was funny because I'm 5'2", if I'm lucky. In the morning, exactly. Sometimes I lie about that, but I'm literally taller than both of my parents. So
taller. Wow. Okay. So your parents
my brother and I are virtually pretty much the same height, and we're the tallest in the family.
Okay.
So literally had no effing
in the genes, basically.
No effing chance of being basketball or anything like that, or whatever.
Basketball would be a stretch, I guess.
Pun
intended.
Yes. Funny story, actually. Another funny story. Let's travel calm on the side for a second. Growing up, I always had these sort of little back pains and stuff like that. And eventually, when I was in my mid-20s, I finally actually did something about it. And I went to the doctors and I got the x-rays, and I was like, what's going on with this middle section of my back? Because I always get these weird pains going on. And basically, there's a section of my spine that's all the vertebrae are meant to be nice and smooth, like in between the spine. And there's about 4 vertebrae of mine in the middle of my back that were like at some stage just like rubbing up against each other. And so...
Okay. So they're pretty much fused, kind of.
Yeah, well, not fused, but the smoothness isn't there. It's all like, it's a mess.
It's worn out, basically.
Well, yeah.
Or it wasn't even there, maybe.
They call it Sherman's disease. It's not really a disease, but it's just like what, And so... Moral to the story was that the doctor basically said that the vertebrae were 2 centimeters smaller than they should be in total. And so, of course, my question was, are you saying that I could have been 2 centimeters taller? And he's like, it's a weird thing to ask, but yes. And I'm just like, that's literally all I got from that experience, is that I could have been 2 centimeters taller.
Oh, my God.
So I was just like, disappointed. I could have been 5'3",
That would make a whole lot of difference.
Yes, I could have been so much taller. But travel calm scenario, basically, this was around about me turning 18. So in my head, I was like, oh, I'm an adult now, and so I
can do drugs.
Oh, I can take the adult dosage of these tablets. And
but this was for flying?
This was for flying. This was so going back. I essentially turned 18, and therefore, because I was 18, I thought, I'm taking the adult dosage because now I'm officially an adult, despite the fact that I'm 5'2". Like I should have taken
it's the body weight that matters.
Yes. And so it was hilarious because I took the 2 tablets, children, I think, or whatever, was just 1 tablet, and so they kicked in as I was walking down the ramp to get onto the plane. Like, I just felt this jolt of fatigue just hit me because they're meant to make you a little bit drowsy, right?
Sleepy.
But this was, the first time I've ever taken them as well. So I'm just like, cool.
And it wasn't like a ease in. It was like...
No, it was like a bang. It was like, I really need to sit down. And I actually don't remember... getting to my chair.
Someone helped you out.
Oh, no. Someone, I'm sure I did, but like from memory, I cannot remember it. And like, these are just like basic over the counter, like, travel sickness tablets. Like there's no real...
Imagine if it took 3.
Yeah, right. Anyway, and so basically, we were going to New Caledonia or something like that. And so we're going to the South Pacific. And, so it was about 3-hour flight. I wake up like just before landing, and I look around, and everyone's got these spew bags, like these vomit bags, and like some of the adults and the kids were just like, oh. So going back to turbulence, apparently there was like the worst turbulence ever. And I slept the whole way through it.
Did you feel that thing?
I did not feel a thing.
Oh, okay. It's good. Those tablets are good.
But the problem was everyone else was sick, and because I was
the smell, man.
But like I was ready to like go and like explore and stuff like that.
And you slept like a baby, probably.
And yeah, I slept like a baby, and everyone was just like too sick to do anything. So I was okay, we'll just wait around till. But it was
Yeah. Now you reminded me because I watched this documentary about like really bad turbulence, and it happened in Australia. I'm not sure, man, maybe in the 90s. But basically it was that bad that one of the flight attendants got his head smashed into the ceiling and like actually broke it through, and then fell. Something happened to the spine that it was like for life.
Wow.
It was very, very bad. I think it was local airline as well.
Like Qantas or...
Qantas. I think Qantas, yeah. But I don't remember around what time that happened. I think it was in the, 95, 96, something like that.
Yeah, wow.
But it was like really, really bad. So Australia has some bad turbulences happening, I guess, Maybe because it's a big island,
It's
the whole
huge.
continent, and it's like once you're over the ocean, that's where all the airstreams change when you exit the land area, So, see, knowledge.
Yes, I'm just like, I'm nodding my head. I'm like, yep, cool. But it's, from one side to another, it's like about 6 hours flight. So it's like essentially the same size as, it's the same distance between LA and New York.
Like we were saying, people don't really understand how big Australia is.
No.
Yeah. So going back to the family thingy, what was the first time you came to Malta? Was that 1.5 years ago, or
no?
Way before?
No, not even way before. The first time I came here, I was 33, so 6 years ago.
Okay,
yeah.
So you came, you stayed for a bit, and you went back.
So basically, there were many years leading up to that time that I was like, I've got to go to Malta, and most of the time with work, the only time I would sort of take a holiday or an extended holiday would be because of a job that I managed to score overseas, and I would extend it a little bit and then make that part of my holiday. So, but most of the time it was usually Asia, or it was usually America. It just was not coming into the direction of Europe, and thankfully, thanks to a corporate client friend of mine, her friend, they decided to get married in Tuscany, and they said, would you like to become our photographer, and because we'd prefer someone that is local as well, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And then obviously going back, being so close in Italy, I was like, no, we have to go to Malta now. So that was 6 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then ever since then, it was pretty much every year. Besides COVID, and even in 2020, I had to write a letter to the government and basically say, please let me out. because
it was still quarantine.
Oh, it was huge over in Australia with the quarantine, and specializing in event photography, there was no work. There was literally two people weren't allowed to talk to each other without a mask, let alone there was no weddings or anything like that happening.
Yeah. And talking about photography, because we jumped a bit, I'm interested. When did you pick that up? Like, was that as a kid or?
Well, in my later years of high school. So the way that I discovered photography was, so I went to a school that was a languages high school, meaning, they also taught, I think there was only 4 languages, Italian, French, German, and Spanish. So up until, I think, year 10, so I was listening to Mitchell's podcast, and we have the structure of like England, so we have years 1 to 12, and then you can either decide to go to college or university, which is much simpler. And so even when you guys were talking about it and like trying to explain it, I was just like, I'm still confused. Like, so
with all the forms starting at the year, which is not the same number.
Form this and form that, and I'm just like, okay, I'm so confused right now, but it doesn't matter, it's all good. So basically, in years 7 and 8, you had to choose a language, and like you could choose Italian, French, and so I chose Italian. And don't ask me to speak Italian, because I know I know all the numbers off the top of my head, and all bits and pieces. But just like with language for me, which I know that we're jumping, but like my brain is able to record and remember words, but stringing a sentence together is the hardest part for me. Like, so like
that sounds like
HD.
No? A bit.
Undiagnosed.
Self-diagnosed.
Self-diagnosed, absolutely. You know what? And it's only since being here that it's really come to my attention. Like, I know we're jumping, hello, ADHD, case in point. But yeah, like, only in the last year and a half have I been like, people have said, don't take offense, but you know, do you have ADHD? And it's like, I've never thought of it.
And I think it's not just the language. There's a lot of things that
there's a lot of,
give it away, right?
It's not just language for me.
It's generally focusing.
Focusing is ridiculously hard. Like, people laugh when they see my browser in my desktop. It is just
everywhere.
I have about 30 tabs open at the same time. Like, you know. Yeah.
I feel you, because I'm like that. I do something, I get this idea. Oh, okay, I need to do this. Let's check.
And then I get distracted.
And then from that,
I do something else.
And it's like your tabs are a representation of how your brain worked for the last 10 minutes.
Oh God,
you know?
That's bad.
How the thought process went.
Yeah. You're like, oh, how did I? But then, you know, it'll take me 10 minutes to realize what I was actually doing in the first place.
And it's like,
oh, I was meant.
You were editing, photos in Lightroom, and then the last thing on your tabs is like, how did Elon Musk's last rocket do in space? Like something completely random. By the way, it exploded. Yeah, but it was planned. Like, they were expecting it to explode. That was was part of the test.
See, apparently. I didn't get that far. See, my interest was face
I read
face
maybe
value.
The first paragraph, and it said all I needed to know. So, but I have that I think some form of ADHD as well.
Yeah.
Because I notice myself sometimes to focus just to edit, because I do, video editing.
Yeah.
Just to have this nice window of couple of hours of just focused editing. For me, some days it's impossible.
It's very hard for me as well. I get too distracted.
I think the time that we live in and all the social media and all the distractions on the phone, that doesn't help. That doesn't help.
No, it's, there's one side of it with multitasking, and there's the other side with ADHD. It's like, it all comes down to, I guess, the focus or the ability to focus. And for me, it is definitely on this side. Like, I cannot. Sometimes it takes me just way longer than I need to do a task, just simply out of pure distraction. Yeah. So back to photography.
Yes, I was going to say, because we drifted a bit. Yeah.
Oh, poor.
But that happens all the time, man. It becomes like a nature of the podcast by now, because with every guest we always drift, and then we come back to the main road. I'm glad,
because I'm a little worried that people are going to be like, okay, back to the photography. Language is high school. I chose Italian. Long story short, my school offered this yearly trip to seniors. So when I say seniors, I mean basically anyone that was from year 10, 11 and 12, I think. The opportunity to go to Italy. And it was Italy, France and Switzerland. So we'd basically start in France, and cut through, I think it was Geneva. And then basically come down and do a tour of Italy and end up in Rome.
It's like Erasmus in the way, almost.
Yeah. Except, of course, we had to pay for it, and we had to fundraise, and so every lunch it was great. Like, we would either have barbecues, or to make it more European, we would sell the Spanish donut churros.
Oh yeah. The one that they fry. In oil.
Deep fried donuts, and it was like chocolate and caramel and dipping sauce, and it was just the best. So I really loved doing that, and I was working at the time as well. My first job was at good old Mickey D's, McDonald's, or as Australians call Maccas.
Maccas?
Yeah, I basically paid myself through the trip. And the worst thing is that the first trip that we were planning in that year, literally my entire group of friends was going as well. So it was just going to be a big mad mess. Unfortunately, I forget for the reason, but it got cancelled. We weren't allowed to go that year for some reason. I think the numbers weren't there, or I don't know what it was. Or the prices were just inflated for flights and stuff, and it was just a bit too expensive.
What time we're talking about? Like
this would have been European summer, so this would have been like July, August, or June, July, or something like that.
But which year? Like 2000?
Oh something? Gosh, so this was before year 2000.
2000. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's easy for me to remember my school, because in year 1 it was 91, in year 5 it was 95, in year 10 it was 2000. So it was really easy. So I was born in 84.
Really?
Yes.
So we're just 6 years apart. I'm 1990.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I know. Moisturizer.
I try, man. I try. Moisturizer doesn't do anything anymore.
No. God, there's no moisturizer on my face. Because that got cancelled, the year later, they said, Frank, if you want to, they basically offered to anyone that wanted to go the previous year to go the following year, and I was the only one that decided to. So I went, and that's when I borrowed my mum's film camera and came to Italy and took a whole bunch of who knows how many rolls of 36 or 24 or 35 mil. And I got back, and people were fairly impressed with my photos, and my teachers were actually wanting copies of them,
But you didn't have any practice beforehand with that camera?
Like literally the first time I picked up that camera.
So it's pure talent.
Oh, well, that or, it's
God's hand on you.
No, but, it's... You know what it's like when you're anyone knows when you're visiting a place for the first time, it's just this sensory overload, you're just like, oh my God, this is what I've seen in books. And, at the time, it was still books. It wasn't internet. It was still books.
But you have still to have some sort of sense of composition, of how to expose properly. Because with the film, I have never shot with a film, so I wouldn't even know how to operate the camera.
Yeah, so...
because you have to rewind.
Well,
right?
exactly. So, I got a couple of like small little lessons in terms of loading film and whatnot. But to be perfectly honest, I think even with the exposure, it was pretty automatic. Like I didn't know what I was doing at the time.
Just shutter.
Yeah, literally. But with regard to composition, though, I would admit that it somehow came natural. So
I really agree, because I think some people just have that.
You either have it or you have to learn it, and thankfully I believe that I had it. Yeah, just
it helps.
Yeah. Just the weighting and how to frame things, and just putting things in a rectangle and making sure that everything sort of balances out. And
at the time, film was quite expensive. No, like you wouldn't go through like 20 rolls because they would cost you a lot of money. And,
yes, but I did.
And then to develop photos as well.
But I did, and this is whilst earning. I remember my first hourly rate, because it's just very easy to remember.
Mackies?
Good old Mickey D. Macca's. It was $5.55. I was earning $5.55 an hour, and so in, I guess in euro terms, that would be like...
What do you think right now is the hourly rate for that kind of job in Australia?
Oh my gosh, it's so much better. So much better. It's like almost...
4 times more. Probably.
It's almost $20. Yeah. And imagine earning $20. I mean, in Australia, obviously, things are a lot more expensive, and the working, minimum wages is a lot better. But I still worked. I would finish school at 3:00 or 2:45, and then I would do the night shift. I'd start at 4 and finish at midnight. And then
that was legal because you were still at school.
Yeah. No, once you're 14, 9 months, you're allowed to basically become an employee. So and then on the weekend I would do the morning shift. So for 2 years straight I did 4 a.m.
Do you still go to McDonald's sometimes?
Yeah, I do.
Really?
I do.
It's not like a hate relationship right now?
No, not at all. I have literally made that many burgers in my entire life that I still remember 25 years later how to make all of them.
Yeah, my wife actually worked briefly as well in McDonald's when we were living in UK.
Yeah.
And after, even when she was working then, and then after, our look, like the way we see McDonald's, it elevated because she saw all the inside in the kitchen and how structured it is and how clean and
very, very regimented, very structured. Everything is like standardized recipe when it comes to
there's no place for error basically.
There isn't, and the error is marginal. Like it's more to do with maybe presentation, or you accidentally forgot to put an ingredient on, but that's because you're in a rush. But you'd have these little like place cards, and it would be lettuce, cheese, tomato,
She told me the powder they would get in bags, and then they put water over it, and it becomes these tiny onion pieces. Dehydrated
onions. Yeah, they would come in this sachet.
What? That's
they
black
were
magic.
But this is I know it was great. You'd have this like white strainer thing that was 2 pieces, and you'd basically you'd empty the sachet in, you'd fill it up with water, and I think an hour later, whatever, it was the cheeseburger onions, like the really small ones.
Yes.
So the real onions on the quarter pounders and stuff, they were like properly proper onions, but these were dehydrated. Yeah, it was like physics, and oh my god,
nice. So after you came back from Italy, all those photos, did your photography, like professional photography journey start like that? You started getting requests to take photos? Or?
No. So basically that was in year 10. In year 11 and year 12, I chose photography as part of my electives. We were lucky to have a darkroom facility at school. So everyone knew that if I wasn't around, they knew exactly where to find me. For like the next 2 years, I just spent developing the photos from the Italy trip, or the trip to the zoo. I'd go to the zoo and spend, waste 5 rolls of film on the same tiger,
just to get that one shot.
Just to, and that process would cost me $200-300, at the time, which was huge.
But when you have a passion, you don't care.
You don't care. And, obviously I was working, and I had, everything was self-funded. So I did all that. And then after that, I went and did a Bachelor of Design Visual Communication with a major in, I know that's a mouthful, a major in photo media or photography. So
So we're very close in education, because I did interactive media production.
There you go.
So it kind of wraps everything in a bubble.
So basically the first couple of years were very foundational, and then you could essentially branch off and do whatever I guess major you wanted to do. So I did advertising and photography.
First 2 years you kind of taste everything, and then next 2 years you're focusing on a particular area. Exactly the same.
Exactly right. Yeah, so that's what I did. And then I was like, so during universities when I started actually shooting like properly, I also scored my first job that was outside of hospitality. And because after McDonald's, I worked in a bar, and then after that is when I first got my proper sort of photography studio job.
So for the time being, photography couldn't, like, it wasn't paying you. Like you weren't making money with it, so you had to do the other jobs.
I wasn't making money from photography until I was about 20, 21.
That's when you switched full-time, just photography?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because on the way here we talked that there was a plan not to be a photographer.
Yes, before photography, it was to be a chef. Okay. Yes, I loved food.
Where did that come from? Like family influenced? Or?
I think so, a little bit. I think the other elective that I chose, because you were able to choose X amount of electives, and the other one was hospitality that I did. And obviously having worked, I was at McDonald's for 4 years, and then I was at the bar for 3.5, I think. So, I was always very used to that hospitality, service driven work, and food was always something that I loved doing, and with I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was just eating. Maybe I just liked eating too much. I don't know.
But listen, food in Australia is so good. I completely understand.
Food in Australia is amazing.
When we went to Sydney, my wife's sister used to work in, Pyrmont Bridge? Pyrmont Bridge, I think it's called.
Oh, Pyrmont Bridge.
Yes, and there's a very famous, I think.
Which one?
Pub at the end of the bridge.
Blackbird?
Probably. She used to work there.
Like level 2 or level 3?
Yes. And
Blackbird Cafe.
Crazy steaks.
I had my 19th birthday there.
Really?
Yeah.
I was there and we came because she was working there, and we came to visit her during work hours, and she was like, you have to try this steak that we have.
Oh.
Because and I didn't take the biggest one, because the biggest one was a challenge. If you eat it, you don't pay for it.
You don't pay for it.
But I didn't take that. I took the smaller one, maybe like 250 grams or so,
just a standard piece, like 250, 300.
Good. Yeah. Oh my God. And the size of the portions in Australia, Jesus Christ.
Decent size. Yeah.
Man, and
good size.
Yeah, it's insane. So I understand the love for food when you have so much good food around you.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging.
It is. It definitely is. The produce as well is just top notch. Like it's very high quality. Like even when you go to a supermarket, there's been discussions around this, but like the 2 or 3 main chains of groceries and supermarkets. So you've got your Woolies or Woolworths, you've got your Coles, and you've got now Aldi is sort of taking over, and it's because otherwise it was just those two together just constantly competing. But when you go into those stores, it's like going to Greens, like you will never see a strawberry that's off.
Yeah.
Everything is just
highest level,
and that's just standard. Yes, you can go to your local grocer and stuff like that, but even so, like from a quality perspective, you're working with some pretty yummy ingredients, and they're usually quite fresh. So
there's the other side where the farmer would say, listen, if there's not a single rotten strawberry somewhere by accident, what's in those strawberries?
Well,
because it's a natural process. I know that there's selection that they look after it and they take them out.
Exactly, because they grade them in terms of
but sometimes
quality.
They're too perfect.
Well, exactly,
something's off,
and that was the argument of that's in a way that's why I quite like these trucks and these things just stopping on the corner, and you can buy the groceries direct from the farmer.
Imperfections.
Yeah, it's like that they're organic, they're real.
Natural.
Like and it doesn't matter if the carrot's got an extra leg. That's more carrot.
You get 2 carrots.
You get 2 carrots. Hello. And I was always used to that because my granddad, his garden was the size of my house. There were just rows of all this fresh veg. So every time we went over to my grandparents' house, we'd come back with bags of potatoes, bags of carrots, bags of a pumpkin this big, So seeing the imperfections in those because they were very much imperfect. It didn't matter, and to be honest, they tasted better.
So that's another thing. Like if you always had kind of local produce around you, that obviously helps with the wanting to be chef.
That and I ever since basically as soon as I was old enough, I pretty much looked after myself in when it came to food and whatnot at home.
Do you still exercise that passion a bit? Like at home, do you like cook constantly, or
I don't?
Too lazy?
I don't. No, it's not. It's not.
Or the time?
It's not laziness, and it's not time. I really struggle with the concept of cooking for one person. Is it like it's not worth it? My family loves me when I go back home because I'm like, you sit down, get out of the kitchen, I will cook for 20 people if I have to.
So it's like you want to give.
It's right? Definitely a giving thing. Like, sometimes I'll cook for hours and I won't even eat. I completely understand you. For
it
me,
makes so much sense.
For me, it's I find cooking very therapeutic as well. Like I just get into this zone, and I just. People offer to help and be like, oh, do you need help? I'm like, no, I genuinely don't want your help. Like, I'm more than happy to make 3 courses and do it all by myself. And it's not because I don't want your help or it's because I want credit or I want anything like that. It's just this comfort zone that is just mentally and spiritually like my zen in a way. Like, for me, cooking is zen.
And I feel some I understand you from that perspective where like when I'm cooking in the kitchen, I don't like people around me helping because I have my own order, how I lay out things. Yeah. And it almost like becomes like a dance in the kitchen, right? Because you take this, you're like this. Your brain makes you move a certain way when you cook. Yeah. Because there's timing. Something's boiling. You need to chop. Like then this needs to be drained. Like it's a process. And if someone gets in, it's like you're doing it wrong. Just leave it. But you don't want to be rude towards the person. So you're just like, okay, I'll take care of this.
No, thankfully my family are well educated in that they just know Frank's cooking, just let him be. Like, and part of me is like, you know what? Like, especially with my sister, 2 kids, she works as well. Like, I want to give her some time off. Like, I don't want you to be thinking about dinner. I will do it. That's my...
It's your way of caring.
It's my way
after your family.
It's my way of caring. Absolutely, I do love that. Like, it kills me that I don't have a barbecue like here.
You don't have here?
No. Well,
just buy the cheap one.
But my apartment's just really small. But like, I would like my. Okay, I know this is hopefully it's not far-fetched because this is the ultimate dream for me. The ultimate dream, and everyone who knows me already, they're like, oh, we know what this dream is because I don't stop talking about it. The concept of having, and I don't know what the infatuation is, I don't know where it comes from, but I've always wanted a gigantic house. Like a stupidly gigantic house. Like we're talking like a chateau, like a
1,000 square meters.
Like 1,000 square meters, 20-bedroom chateau.
Hollywood Hills.
No Hollywood Hills.
Not that kind of house.
No, like in the middle of nowhere, like in the south of France or somewhere in Europe. Absolutely, and I would love just to be in a position where I could, obviously there would be a business element to it. We could host weddings, we could do that sort of thing. But
so like a venue / house.
Exactly. But also, Escape to the Chateau, that TV show series. Oh my God, Dick and Angel. Love them to bits. Love them so much. I messaged them once and they replied and I was like, oh my God.
They're real.
It's like I photographed celebrities and I got like, oh, you know, like I didn't care about celebrities. I was like, oh, Dick and Angel. When there are no weddings going on, or when there's no, or even when they are, like, you know, these properties have like sheds and outhouses that are big enough as 2-3 story houses alone. Like, you know, some of these sheds are massive if you converted them over to an actual property. But I would just love to be in a position where I could just get all my friends and family under one sort of space and just be like, you know what, you need a holiday, come. You know,
so not like permanently, just so they visit.
Well, it's up to them. They can, depending on who it is, obviously. There are certain people
there
that
are favorites, and
there are absolutely, yeah. There are yeses, and there are hell no's. But the ability to have almost like this refuge, this halfway house for people in my life that just need a bit of a holiday, need a bit of a break. And be like, you know what? I even wanted like part of it to be like an artist retreat. So if someone was working on a creative project, you know, they were writers or they were painters or whatever, you'd have your art studio. You can have residence for 6 months here. You know, do all your thing.
That's really cool idea.
My ideas are like,
because there's so many ways you can use that property, right?
It's
even from business standpoint.
From a business point, you know, you can grow your own veg. You can grow, you know, some
gardening courses, anything, you know,
carpentry, anything. Like,
is that the goal? Like, are you
that is the goal?
Working towards that, hopefully, at someday, or it's just like a far-fetched dream?
That is the goal. And usually, when I say something, I do it. Usually. I mean, everything up until this point has been realized. This is, for me, financially, is a bit of a stretch at this point in my life, but I will work towards that. The problem is that the longer it takes, the more expensive they become.
We're talking kind of, I guess, around the like €1 million property.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, which in
depending where it is, obviously.
Exactly, because I've always in Australia, €1 million is just a 2-bedroom apartment. You know, like
Bondi Beach area or something, right?
Not
or even more.
Not even. Like the average, I think the median price for a home, I think in Sydney is now 1.3. And so, you know,
1.3 million.
Yeah, it's insane.
Australian dollars.
So we're talking about 900,000.
Okay.
You know, so imagine paying 900,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment.
In Malta, not that hard to imagine. You know?
Yes, but we talking
have properties like that. Obviously,
but that is the average.
And here we're talking luxury. For that price.
Here, that's
very luxury.
That's Spinola Bay, or that's whatever it is. That's with a water view and whatnot. Those prices are happening in Sydney, an hour away from the city. Where where were you staying in Sydney?
We were staying very close to Bondi.
Okay, so
just up the road, really.
Like
there was this road leading literally to the street, and then the
Bondi
Bondi Beach like grass starts.
Oh wow!
You know?
So you were literally in Bondi.
We would walk to Bondi Beach in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So we were very close. There was this big park in front of the house where we were staying with a lot of barbecues and stuff. I think football pitch.
Yep.
And then we just went down the road 10 minutes and we're in the beach.
Very nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
Very nice area. But we didn't have the car, so it was like, you know.
Yeah.
If we had to go somewhere further, we had to either ask someone, because there was a group of people, of Lithuanians who live there.
Yeah.
So we would meet every other day, you know, and go somewhere.
Yeah.
But without the car, you're just like walking. But it was very nice. Very nice area.
You know, you're a fit dude. Like, you know, it was fine.
Yeah, but it was January. So it was so hot.
It was hot.
Man, I got the sunburn that I never had in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
where it was like peeling off almost same day, and it was really bad.
Getting sunburned in Australia is like no other.
Because it's the ozone.
There's no
thing,
ozone.
Right?
There's no ozone.
That's why sun is so harsh.
So here it's great. Like I don't really, as you can see, go in the sun much. But
even me, I don't go out yet.
Well, yeah, but at least here, you spend some time in the sun and you go brown and you stay brown. In Australia,
you're just red.
You go from normal to second-degree burns to the point of like you're covering yourself in aloe vera gel, and like your limbs are not touching each other, like even just laying on a bed hurts. And then after all that pain, you end up starting to peel, and then all that lovely color that is just basically burnt skin that's just starting to peel off. Like there is no gain in getting burnt in Sydney and Australia.
I got burnt in the first day when we came, and it was cloudy.
Yeah. And
it wasn't a sunny day like it is today, for example. It was cloudy, and I got burned.
Being close to the water as well, the sun obviously reflects off the water, and definitely, and it's painful burn. Yeah. Like sometimes you can get blisters and stuff like that. Like you are burning as a human.
I wanted to talk to you about the magazine covers, because Mitchell mentioned that you shot in New York, I think.
Yes.
Or obviously in Sydney, probably. Like any particular moments in the photography career that stands out to you, as a milestone, or you met someone that you never thought you're going to meet and photography brought you there?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been, I think, freakishly lucky in that department. Okay, so the first magazine cover I got was so part of my university. We had to do like experience, like placement at a design studio or whatever, and there was a magazine in Australia that was very taboo, because in the 80s and 90s it was essentially like it was artistic, it fell under the umbrella of artistic nude. Okay, so there was a magazine, a photographic magazine called Black and White magazine, and it started off being both female, male artistic nude photography. And then in the 90s, I believe, the male component went to its own magazine, so which was called Blue. And so for growing up, it was like, I don't want to say the word porn, because it wasn't, but there were lines, and there were because some of these magazines, so in Australia you go to a news agency and you there's racks and racks and racks of different magazines, and this actual it was called Studio Magazine, so the actual name of it unfortunately is no longer, but they looked after a bridal magazine, they looked after a whole bunch of different magazines, but the magazine that I was like super interested in was Black and White. And I, as part of a university, I thought this is never going to happen, but hey, try it,
That's the first step.
Literally, the worst thing they can say is no, okay? And that's not no to you, that's just a general no, because it's not going to work for them. Okay,
so no for the idea,
no for the idea, no for the timing. Because anyway, and so it was just a 2-week placement. I had to do basically, I think, 40 hours total, so 20 hours a week over 2 weeks. And I emailed them, and it was basically a yes. And I was like, what the hell? This is the dream magazine that I want to shoot for, that I want to be like, this is like the top of the career goal.
And by this time, you already had like studio shooting experience?
Hardly any. Because
you're still learning.
I was still at university. Point. I still really hadn't been like, I was doing my own little shoot here and there that was like a freebie here, freebie there. Like I wasn't really getting paid for this sort
just
of
for
work.
the sake of portfolio, kind of
Folio, experience, all that, you know, all that stuff. And after those 2 weeks, I ended up sticking on for like just over a year.
So they liked you.
Yeah, well, I liked them more than I think they liked me, but like I was just willing to stick
you just
around.
Grabbed and didn't let go.
I just like, because I mean, you've got to remember that this in my head was the job, and like the fact that it was like, you know, someone wanting a fashion student wanting to work at Vogue or Harper's Bazaar. Like this for me was the pinnacle of what I wanted, and obviously. It's funny because your idea of something versus the reality of something, you know, most of the time can be quite different, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're young, you know, you're like, oh, I really, really want this. But then when you get it or when you experience it, you're like, oh, this isn't all it was cracked up to be. Or
you idolize things.
Yeah, you idolize things, exactly. And so I absolutely idolized it. And, you know, I was doing like, as we were talking earlier, like the bottom of the barrel, like work. You know, I was opening the mail. I was scanning things. I was, you know, like, you know, it was an exciting work. But like even at the back of the magazine where there were the photographers and the suppliers for the wedding magazine and stuff like that, I would have to make sure that, you know, before it went to print, like there was a space between the T semicolon space O2 semicolon space the phone numbers. Like I had to like make sure from a I guess a style guide point of view that everything was perfect, you know. So, you know, it had nothing to do with photography, but I was just in the space. And I remember that they had this closed sort of closet with glass, and it was just like this giant bookshelf. And on this bookshelf there were all these manila folders, and I would open them and they were in alphabetical order. And they were submissions. So little did I realize before I did this internship, I thought everything was like shot, like then and there for the magazine, right? But it was actually submission based. Most of it, 90% of it was submission based. So 90% of the content was being provided by photographers from all around the world saying, hey, you know, these are some photos, these are some photos, these are some photos. And then basically in each, depending on the theme of that edition, they would say, okay, we're going to use this one, we're going to use this one, we're going to use this one, we're going to use this one. But we're talking of the David LaChapelle's, the Mario Testino's, the Patrick Dumarchilier's, the creme de la creme of like fashion, nude, portrait photography, that these names I've like gone through and studied like visually my whole life. Like these are the people I absolutely idolize, you know. So yeah, that was the first experience. Through that, basically the husband of one of the workers at that magazine was a music producer, and he was funnily enough representing a small band in Australia that was up and coming. They were like these teenage boys. They were called Short Stack. And essentially my first magazine cover came out of then photographing those boys, which again, back then, you know, freebie, none of it was paid. But I got my first magazine cover when I was like 21, 22.
It's not bad. I mean,
yeah.
But when you think from today's perspective,
it's huge. It was huge.
It's huge, but to shoot a cover for a magazine and not get anything for it, you know.
Yeah. Look, that's.
But there's things you have to do to come to a certain place.
There needs, and this is the thing. I'm an advocate of don't do anything for nothing. Like, you know, like I've been there and I've done that. However, like this is the thing. It all comes down to mutual respect, and value. If you end up as an artist, as somebody that is doing something for a minimal fee or no fee, you need to weigh up the pros and cons of that. Okay, you need to be the one that's in charge.
Yeah,
you are deciding to do it for free, not because someone is saying, "Oh, well, you're not worth it," because you're absolutely worth it. Don't ever believe that you're not worth something. Your time and your petrol and everything, you should be remunerated for that regardless. But for me, it was an opportunity that I couldn't say no to. And I knew that would be a little bit of a step up, a little bit of
like a gateway.
A little bit of a portfolio. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like as a naive 21-year-old at the time, like I was being promised all these things. Oh, we're going to get you this artist. We're going to get you. None of that eventuated.
I really like the saying, exposure doesn't pay bills.
Exposure does not pay the bills. It didn't pay the bills back when I was 20, and it doesn't pay the bills now.
Yeah.
There needs, especially in this country, I feel like Malta, when it comes to photography, in terms of an industry, is a good 20 years behind. In that, at least, clients and corporates do not respect the craft and the time, and therefore the money that is associated with that at all.
Do you think it comes from the perspective of ever developing technology, and just what I'm trying to say, people have this perception that today, to take a good photo, you don't really need to know much, just because the technology is so good. Because let's say when you were taking photos in Italy, you needed to know how to, develop the film after, or you took it somewhere. But like there was more knowledge required to make a good photo than today. You just pick up the latest camera, set it on auto, and the photo will be decent in a way, or at least acceptable for most businesses here in Malta if it's a commercial shoot, right? And a lot of times you hear those stories where they will just ask their cousin or a brother or a sister who have a good camera.
Who has a good camera.
You know what I mean?
My argument to that is, does your cousin who builds houses have a good hammer? Like, does he have a good jigsaw? Does he have a good, screwdriver? Like, the cameras are just tools.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes, our cameras generate a certain product, like just by pressing the button, so to speak. But you've got to think about, it's not just pointing and shooting. Like there's so many variables. There's lighting, there's composition, there's this, that. There's experience at the end of the day. And I'm sorry, but if you've been working for 20 years doing a craft, and then you get presented with a client that says, "Oh, you're only worth this." Sorry, but you've got to learn to say no. Not every job is for everybody.
And you have to be in a place.
You have to be in a
where
place
you can say no.
Yes.
A lot of people who are just starting, they will take anything and do anything just to get portfolio or some sort of pay, or
It becomes a catch-22.
Exactly.
Because you want the folio, but then you also want to put your foot down, so to speak, and say, no, I'm worth X. There needs to be a compromise, obviously. And I literally just said to you that I've photographed, I photographed Kylie Minogue for free. Am I going to do it for free? Fucking yes, I'm going to do it for free.
You actually took photos of Kylie?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, there's...
What?
Look, there's...
And Keith as well? Or just her?
No. Who? Keith?
Keith, that's her husband, no?
No, that's Nicole Kidman. You're thinking of Nicole Kidman.
And you said?
Kylie Minogue.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, no. Look,
she had a song with Robbie Williams, because I'm a big fan of Robbie.
Absolutely did. Yeah. He's coming to Malta, isn't he? Oh,
I'll tell you
sorry.
after the
That was
podcast.
exciting. That was exciting.
I'll tell you after the podcast.
Oh, I know.
Because I can't mention it just yet.
I think you did mention it to me at the last gig we did.
I did. But we zip it for now. Because it's not 100%, so I don't want to say anything.
I know nothing, I see nothing, I hear nothing.
So, yeah, Kylie Minogue, she's cool. I don't like her sister, though.
Danny? Yeah, look.
When she came on Australian Got Talent, I think she was one of those judges.
One of those, I'm not. Yeah.
I don't know.
Look,
Kylie is a legend.
Kylie. I'm so sorry, Danny. I'm really sorry, Danny. Because clearly Danny's going to be listening to this on the Australian news tomorrow. Frank said in a podcast, quote, No. But at the same time, like, you've got to think from Danny's perspective. I mean, can you imagine living in the shadow of Kylie?
Not really. No.
But imagine your older brother was like this gigantic, like literally household name.
He is gigantic.
He is?
Yeah, I have he's my younger brother, but he would wrap me up like a chair.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he's massive. I mean, he's a police officer, so don't fuck with him.
Don't fuck with him.
Yeah, and he's now doing jiu-jitsu, so he would break me.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. But
from a family, like, I try to imagine the family sort of politic and the family setup, and don't get me wrong, like Danny. There was some when I was in my good old clubbing days my clubbing days lasted about 3 years, like 18 to 22 or something, like, 4 years. Like, it was very short-lived, But I remember there was one Danny song that was just like the best,
I don't even know a single song of hers.
No,
I know she's a singer as well.
I'll send you some YouTube links from back in my good old days. See, as you can see, like, I'm saying YouTube when I should have just said Spotify or something like that. That I'm just going.
No, I love YouTube.
Showing my age.
I listen to music on YouTube all the time.
I do too, because I love the visuals sometimes. Like, sometimes there's nostalgia. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, I remember this. And especially with the autoplay where it'll just come up with something similar within that genre. It'll be like, oh my God.
And that's the reason I use YouTube Music, not Spotify. They have a music app, just because you can find even like live performance video, the audio from that video, you can listen on that app.
Like, I love the Beyonce Coachella like performance where it's just the audio.
You hear the crowd and everything.
Yeah.
So back to Kylie. How did that happen? Like,
okay, so
and you said it was for free.
Yeah. It was for a local magazine. So basically, with Australia and the whole marriage equality side of things. So marriage equality for me was something personal because I am within that community, and I've always had a level of charity in me. Like, I've always wanted to do. I'm happy to give to causes that I gel with, So basically, when I was, I created my general photography brand. It was just my name, Frank Farrugia Photography, and it's the same. But in 2012, I had this idea in mind for many years, and I just thought, you know what, stuff it. I want to represent same-sex couples in a more visual way, because growing up as a gay guy or gay kid, the only references were on television, really. And the references on television were generally like, we're talking the Jerry Springers, You know, so not the most positive outlook of the community.
It's where people fight, right?
Oh yeah, and you know, most of them were actors anyway.
And it's
they were
comedic,
it was all for entertainment purpose. That is obviously not a reflection of the community. But even the we have like one of the biggest Mardi Gras, like the celebrations in Australia, and we just had World Pride over in Australia, in Sydney. And so sometimes back in the day when I was younger, they used to televise it, like the day after.
It was like live on TV.
Yeah, it was like, well, I think it was the day after technically, but, you know, and so, you know, my dad would be watching it weirdly, but he would be watching it and like, you know, throwing abuse at the television, you know.
Okay, so
you know, it wasn't.
He was on the opposite side of the fence.
I never came out to my parents, really,
but
like officially.
But today, I mean, they know.
I haven't spoken to my parents in 20 years, 15 years.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you want to go there? Up to you. I mean, I'm not pushing. But
look, my family was growing up was hard. Like, and this is part of the reason why Mitchell and I really gel together. It's because I saw a little version of me, sort of in his story. So basically, my story growing up is DV, domestic violence. So a lot of my growing up was tiptoeing around my dad in waiting for him to explode, basically, which was generally often.
Was that personal abuse on you?
No, it was on all of us.
Okay,
And
so everyone was...
including my mum.
Okay.
And for the first half of my, you know, from, you know, up until I was, I don't know, maybe a teenager, my mum always used to sort of stick up for us. But she also then reached a point where she knew that if she did stick up for us, she would become the target. So eventually she stopped sticking up for us. And, you know, her willingness to sort of, I don't know,
turn her back on you, kind of?
Yeah, it was just, it felt, you know, there's a number of moments of ultimate betrayal, which, you know, it is what it is. But basically, let's just say I needed, at the age of 14, I was having breathing issues with my nose, and I went through this period, and still to this day it still happens. Sometimes my nose would bleed like 4 or 5 times a day, just out of nowhere. It would just start bleeding.
Blood pressure?
Blood pressure. So anyway, I went to the doctors. They basically said I had a broken septum. They needed
What's a septum?
So the septum is just the main bit here.
Okay. The thing that separates.
Yeah, exactly.
Air canals.
So so I needed a septoplasty because I think this side was blocked because this was like that. It was deviated. Okay. And they said, "Oh, look, you know, moral to the story is that to fix your nose, we need to break your nose first and then basically put it in place. But obviously you'll be under, so you won't feel a thing. It's just the recovery period, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, went into surgery the following morning. The doctor, you know, sort of for the doctor to, you know, especially being 14, the doctor sort of does his rounds in the morning and sort of goes and visits his patients that he had surgery on the day before or whatever it is. He eventually got to me and he said everything's fine and, you know, great, it's all fixed. And then literally as he was at the doorway, I remember this vividly, like as if it happened yesterday, and he sort of like looked like he was like walking away, and then turns around and he says, "Oh, by the way, we didn't have to break your nose because it was already broken in 3 places."
I was going to ask, was that, you know, trauma thing that did it? Okay.
Well, let's just say I was a good kid at school and never got into any fights. Okay. And I wasn't a clumsy kid.
Okay.
So, you know, and that's just one story. Like we're talking years of 20, so basically 25 years of that environment when I just decided, no, enough's enough, stuff this. And so we're now, no, it's now going to be 14 years.
So means till 25 you were with your parents?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I moved, but I had moved out when I was 20. I actually moved out when I was 20.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, it's
happy families.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, I can only try to imagine and understand the situation.
Yeah.
You know,
look,
I never had that in my family, so yeah.
I mean, looking back on it, like it does thankfully feel like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
It does. Like
it's the best choice that you did to separate yourself from that.
Zero regrets. And this is 3 out of my 4 siblings are disconnected from my parents for the same reason.
Okay.
And my mum's parents, my grandparents, essentially became my parents. And my nana turns 91 in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And
but that's a big celebration, I guess.
I really wish I could be there because they're in Australia. But yeah. Anyway,
but talking about, because we were talking about same-sex marriage,
sorry,
right?
yes.
I'm very surprised because Australia is very liberal towards that, right?
We are,
or it's just recent that they're very liberal.
We've had. Gosh, the Mardi Gras happened in, dare I say, the first Mardi Gras essentially was a protest because I think in the 70s or 80s? I'm so sorry, I screwed this up, but Mardi Gras turned 30 something, or anyway, it's been around for quite a long time. The first one acted as a protest because you know, this was a time where the police were still, you know,
quite cruel.
Yeah, to say the least, you know. And, you know, and so this was sort of like the stance of enough's enough, you know. You know, let's move forward from this. And obviously it took quite a while. So going back to the photography side of things, I wanted to represent same-sex couples in a more realistic light, you know, like never did I see growing up photos of like, you know, couples in a warm embrace, like, you know, like hello, like it's hilarious. It's like, you know, there was this us and them mentality, you know, quite a lot of us and them. And it's like, what, do you think we don't have jobs? We don't have the same struggles as you? We don't have to cook dinner after, you know, we don't pay taxes. We don't, you know, we literally live exactly the same lives. Like how is this disconnect such an apparent thing, you know? And so I wanted to change that. And I set up a second sort of sister business called Same Love Photography. And from that, I said to myself, I wanted to have a charitable element where I would do pro bono work for the main organisation that was pushing marriage equality in Australia. So Australian Marriage Equality as a name, AME. And from that, they started, you know, getting some good traction and good movement. And one of those situations was Kylie wanting to take part in the campaign.
Okay, so she was campaigning for it. Okay.
Yeah, and Kylie's
one of the celebrities,
and Kylie has always been like, Kylie's like, you know, since day dot, like she's always had you know, that as her message, so to speak. So yeah, there was this article that was being written about her and her her support, so to speak, for the cause. And thankfully, because of all the work that I had done with them prior, they said, look, like, we want you to take this photograph. You deserve to take this photograph. So,
was it for the article or a cover?
It was it was only for an article. It was only an article. So, but there was this like symbol that, the love heart symbol that was basically being used as a campaign element to bring all the celebrities together. So it wasn't just her. There was a bunch of other Australian, singers and actors and stuff like that I managed to photograph, politicians and whatnot. But that sort of symbol brought the whole campaign together. So literally I took about 5 frames, because she was being interviewed at a hotel in Sydney. I was waiting in the foyer. I was basically so nervous that I needed a couple of drinks to calm me down. And
I'm not surprised.
I was just like, okay. Literally took 5 because they were like, oh, do you want to wait? And, she was sort of like over there in the corner with the journalist, and I was just sitting by myself with my camera, like,
So it wasn't like a studio shoot?
No,
it
literally
was just run and gun thing?
It wasn't a studio shoot. It was let's make this happen really bloody quickly with the limited time that I have.
It's very
because this was
precious.
one interview of like several that she was doing. We just so happened, thankfully, to be the first one. So and she was, obviously, she was running a bit late. So like, that meant I was drinking too much.
So, was it like, did you actually meet her, like, hi, and take the photo and go? Or like you had a conversation?
No. It was very much the former. It was,
And I guess something like that, her people would have to approve to go public with it?
Everything is controlled. Everything is controlled. Like even just interacting with her was like, she was like, oh, what would you like me to do? Where would you like me to stand? Like, I wouldn't say it was a robotic thing, but it was just so typically managed. Like, that shot was, because obviously we were also after a specific shot. We wanted her to do the symbol. So the brief was very, very straightforward. And it was just a matter of making sure that the lighting was right and stuff like that. And
how much time you spent editing that photo?
Oh my God, so much. And like there was...
Because you want to make it perfect, obviously.
Yeah. Well, there was, there was one of those lights... those sort of lights with the bulbs in it? Sorry, lights with the bulbs in it. Wow, that's every light. Sorry. Let me backtrack. Wow.
A photographer speaking.
Yes. Sorry, that was when my brain and my mouth do not communicate, which is often. The letters of the alphabet that are like this sort of brass-looking, copper-looking with the light bulbs inside. That's
like a vanity mirror kind of style.
No, but like the letter of the alphabet. So it was a H, an H.
Okay.
And so from a Photoshop point of view, I was like, oh, maybe I should turn it into a K. So I actually turned it into a K, which took hours. Because
you had to cut pieces of it and kind of
exactly.
reconstruct
But I was like, if I did this and I did this, I can actually turn it into a K. And it worked. And
make it like look real.
Yeah.
As if it was there.
Exactly. You can't tell. And honestly, you can't tell. But that was a highlight. I've had other magazine covers I've got covers of books, like novels, or not novels, but actual, there was a marriage equality book that one of the main activists in Australia had written, and we used one of my photos that I took at a wedding that I did in New Zealand. So luckily with photography, I've been to Canada, I've been to New Zealand, been to Fiji, been to Thailand, Vietnam, Italy, the US. Like I've been lucky in some of these places several times as well. Yeah. So
I was telling to Mitchell, photography is such a thing that it can take you,
anywhere
in the world.
Can take you anywhere, and
that's the beauty of it.
And you know, like this is the thing as well. When I decided to tell my parents, "Hey, I want to pursue photography," there was obviously that reluctance 20 years ago. There was like, "Oh no, that's not a secure job. That's not a, you know, become this, that, you know, an accountant, study computers, blah 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 blah, do all that," and somehow I don't know how I managed to win that battle, and
at the end of the day, I don't think it's a battle. It's your choice. It's your
life.
I
know, but there's also that, you know,
family is a big influence.
Family can be there can be those pressures of but do a trade or do something you can fall back on. And I've always had photography in my life since I discovered it, pretty much every single day since then. So even if there were periods where I wanted to take a break from photography. So I became a photography tutor. Or
it's not really a break.
I know, but like picking up the camera, like I've written courses for colleges, online courses. So now.
Maybe it's a joy of seeing someone learning what you already know.
I absolutely love seeing those light bulb moments.
Like when they discover...
they're like, I get it now. And I'm like, yes. Sorry.
So like like, you know, like when you understand how the aperture works and what's the relation with the shutter speed and like...
It's because
I can make this blurry.
Yes,
you know?
And just
I mean, this is basic,
but it's just like even them getting their head around the numbers. You know, the aperture, bigger aperture, smaller number, bigger, more depth. You know, like it's.
To be honest, it took me a while as well.
It does take you a while.
Because in video, it's pretty similar. I mean, in photography, but. Okay, so the number gets bigger, so the aperture gets smaller. Like you know, it's like until you get used to it, and then it becomes second nature, like dialing in the settings, 100%, right?
100%. It's just that it's not as photography is not obviously in video is not as straightforward as it seems. You know, you can just pick up the camera and put it on auto and let the camera literally do everything. But is that the result you want? Yeah. And most of the time, the answer is no. Yeah. And
I feel like the level. Sorry to interrupt, but I feel like there's two levels of understanding camera in general. The first level is when you understand it to the point that at any particular situation you will take the best picture for that environment and that light, etc. And then there's a second level where you will start playing around with settings so you can get like an artistic expression. Like I said, you know, like a long exposure, you know, something in focus and everything else, you know. Or it seems like it's moving. You know what I mean? Like
or a silhouette. Playing with
you start
shadow
creating art rather than just taking a good picture. You know?
I also feel like correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that photography per se in Malta at the moment is considered on the same level as art, you know, in terms of, like a painting or a sculpture and stuff like that.
It's not as appreciated, I guess.
It's not as appreciated, no.
There are some galleries that feature
100%,
you know, high quality art photography.
And I'm a bit of a collector as well myself. So when I was writing that year, when I was writing a course for a college in Sydney, I was making that with photography on the side. So, you know, I was working stupidly. You know, I was working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then doing weddings Saturday, Sunday, coming home, editing, or going to teaching. So like my life was just work.
Okay.
But I made at that time, that particular year, I made a stupid amount of money. And so I decided, you know, I'm going to think of this money properly, and I decided to actually spend a decent amount of money on some prints. And they've tripled in value.
Just because of people who made them, or because I'm not sure how the value goes up in that case. I understand how the painting gets more expensive when someone dies who painted it.
Sure,
you know.
Sure, it's all about exclusivity, right? So just like, and you know, it's the same thing with a vintage car, or you know, or whatever. Like, you know, if a manufacturer says, "Hey, I'm only making 5 of these," then and 50 people want them. Then obviously there's going to be a bit of a hustle, right? So the way that, and I don't know if this is all galleries, but basically the way that art, or in terms of photography, a photo is made up of an edition. So essentially we're going to say, hey, this photo is available in this particular size, exactly as you see it, and we're only going to make 10 of them. Okay, and so once those 10 sell, that's it. You know, they can make a second edition, but it has to be somewhat different to the first. So they might have a larger size, a smaller size, a color version, a black and white version.
Cannot be exactly.
It cannot be the same, because what you're essentially buying into is you're saying, I am one of 10 people that own this exact thing, right? And so what happens is the first, say, 1 to 3. So prints 1, 2, and 3 might cost you 2,000. Prints 4, 5, 6 is 5,000. 7, 8, it's tiered. The pricing structure is tiered. So the less available they become, the more valuable, the higher the price goes. So basically,
but like you said, first 2, let's say $2,000, third, fourth, and fifth,
$5,000.
Yeah, but third, fourth, and fifth becomes valued at $5,000 when the first 2 sell, right?
Yes.
It's because at the point when all 10 are available, the value should be same for all 10.
Exactly right.
Right.
So essentially, the person that paid X for print 10. Number 1 goes up to that same price. All of them go back up to that same price. So from an economical point of view, you're better off getting in first. But obviously,
because you will win more in value.
But you're also of the risk that they may not sell. You know. So for instance, I've got a Martin Luther King print. That was taken by a student photographer at the time, which a beautiful, beautiful image. It's the back of his head, looking, he's on stage looking at, he's about to talk to a massive crowd of people. So I don't know if you watched the movie Selma.
No, but is that the famous speech where I have a dream?
It's not that one.
Not that one?
It's so basically there's the Montgomery to Selma walk. Okay, so this is that period. I think it was in 65. I think it was in 1965, when don't quote me on that. When people were basically trying to cross the bridge, and there were police officers literally beating people to death.
I've seen a documentary about it. I think.
So then they did a 5-day march, and basically MLK did a speech at the end. Or was it Selma to Montgomery? So I think it's Selma to Montgomery. Sorry. So the speech was done at the end, and the photographer Stephen Summerstein, he's in his I think 80s now. He was a student photographer for the university newspaper, and everyone was obviously at the bottom, you know, pointing their camera up towards the stage, but somehow, I don't know, he managed to get some extra access or whatever. Rather than taking the same photo that everyone else took, he basically went up on stage, literally stood behind MLK, Martin Luther King's face and head, and literally focused on the crowd. But then you can see literally the shape of his head, and the shape of his head is like, it's iconic in itself. Like you know who it is. You know exactly who it is, and that very photo was used as inspiration for the cover art for the movie, the Hollywood movie. So instead of the crowd he's speaking to, the movie cover has the back of his head, and instead of the people, there's a big line of police officers with guns.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's photoshopped.
Literally. So, but you know, that image was appropriated to make the Hollywood cover. Like it's a historical moment that, you know, was used from a photograph. So, you know, there are things like that I like to hold on to, and
you have a copy of.
I got a copy.
Limited edition.
Yeah, it's one of. Well, this is the thing. This particular photo has been released a few times, so there's like 3 different sizes, and I think I have the middle size, and I think that was an additional 25 or 25. So that particular size is 25, and so
it's very limited.
But it's already doubled in price because the last one just got sold.
Okay.
So if I was to try to sell it now, not that I want to at this stage, but you know, it does value. So in terms of the you know, the currency of photography, it can you know, especially with limited work, it's all about limited.
What's your outlook on NFT and photography?
Ooh.
Are you the one who is like, that's stupid? Because it's not physical, you know. A lot of people don't like it because it's not something you can take and hold in your hands.
Exactly. To be honest, I don't know. I did. There was at the very initial part of the whole NFT thing that came out. I was like, oh, maybe this could be a way of, you know, making some extra dollars or whatever. But for me, that drive has completely phased out. It's not something I'm even looking at this point in time.
I feel like NFT kind of got forgotten already.
I feel like it already has. There's you know, it was quite a topic of conversation. I mean, now it's all about AI. You know, now it's that we feel like
because we're nearing the end, I think, of the podcast. Actually, at the end, we talked about it with Mitchell.
Okay. Yep.
So he's a bit like, he doesn't like ChatGPT or where it goes and how it's gonna affect, especially the youth. You know, they like, you don't really need to research. You don't need to read. You just type what you want and you get it, and that's the bad part. And we agreed on that. And I'm really interested. What do you think is gonna happen to photography? Because obviously, you can generate very photorealistic images, but it's not the photo of the moment. It's
not the reality. So I guess from I consider myself more of a domestic photographer. So you know, events, you know, everyday people that are basically my clients. So with regard to things like events, I think we're pretty safe. I mean, like, you know, by all means, if you want to say to a generator, hey, put my face and my partner's face on a bride and groom's body on the top of the Dolomites, you know, and with the wind blowing or whatever it is, you know, and you want something artificially generated, then look, you know, I personally don't resonate with that because I would actually prefer the actual real thing. You know, I would actually say, you know, I'd be like, let's go there and let's literally do this shot. That's going to mean a whole lot more, because
it's a memory
with
experience.
that comes the experience, the memory, the helicopter ride, the plane ride, the travel,
so you're traveling,
the smell,
expensive.
I know, but
no, but I get what you mean, and I was gonna say a lot of couples, they choose a photographer because of the person that
absolutely
he is, right?
Absolutely,
and you don't get that with generated images.
No,
you know?
And I mean, you cannot fabricate real emotion. You know, it's there. It has to be. It's a tangible thing. I know it's captured on a 2D, you know, output of a photograph or a video, whatever it is. But I mean, that moment is a microsecond in time, and I don't think from a domestic photography point of view, AI is going to be able to ever replace that. From a commercial point of view, I think the commercial photography side of things might be a bit more in trouble with regard to, you know, more like product photography. You know, where they might be able to, or it might be a fusion. So they might be able to, you know, photograph the actual real life product, so you know, the coffee machine, but then put it up against an AI generated background and then fuse the two together, which
it's a
to
tool, right?
To be honest, isn't really too dissimilar to what happens in graphic design and anything anyway.
You can replace the background in Photoshop,
whether it's a vector background or
how different is that?
It doesn't really matter, but I think and I don't know if I'm thinking short-sightedly, but I'm more interested and excited about AI's influence on things that matter, like, for instance, the medical industry and so forth. Like, I just really hope that it can, you know, because they're talking about, like, you know, how it can affect, like, surgeries and stuff like that, and, you know, being able to, you know...
Listen, I'm pretty sure we're going to reach 100 years. Easy.
Yeah.
With how things are developing.
Yeah.
You know, like, the robots will be performing most of the surgeries by the time we need them, I think. And they will be as precise or even more precise than human.
I don't think that's a far-fetched statement at all.
Even
now, I think they
do some stuff like that. I've seen some, at least they test things like brain surgery where it's like micro surgery, you know, and the robots, as long as your head is not moving, obviously, they are very, very precise.
You know, there is room for human error, obviously, and so you remove that out of the equation. Ultimately,
better chance.
It benefits us. It's safer. Like, if we're the one that's on the operating table, then I would probably prefer that, knowing that a robot can be dead still, or, you know, have little shake, and versus somebody that obviously is human and therefore has...
When they operate on your spine or something, you know, it's a bit nerve-wracking.
Yes, and life-changing, obviously, if things go wrong.
Yeah,
so,
and non-reversible most of the time.
Literally.
Yeah. And then another thing I just realized, like, for example, even your camera, it has AI already, I think.
Yeah, it
does. Autofocus.
Mine, the R6 does. The focusing is sensational, but the R5, which Mitch has, which is just such a lovely camera, it has the auto tracking of the eyes. So if there's obviously people, or even, I don't know if it even works on animals.
I think so.
I think it does. But you know, it'll automatically focus on the face or the eyes. So whereas with the R6, it doesn't have that.
How does it choose the subject? If there's like 5 people, how does it choose which one to focus on?
That's a good question. You can literally...
The closest one?
Well, usually focus is based on contrast and texture, so lighting and texture. So, you know, you can imagine if 4 people are in shadow and one person is bright, obviously it's going to favor the one that's bright. But it sort of toggles. Because I mean, we've done some video work actually with his camera, And but it's, you know, that's the thing. It's so easy to fix. If it's on the wrong person, you can just tap the screen, and now it's focused on this person instead.
And it locks.
And it's amazing.
Can you imagine, like, in 10 years what you're gonna have in your camera?
Oh my gosh, the progress that the speed in which things are happening, and but this is the thing, to think that this technology always, more often than not, originates in either medical or military. To think that, you know, what has technically already been created that's going to then get appropriated to everyday consumer products.
If we have that here today, what does military have?
Literally,
you know?
Literally, it's very exciting. Like, it is exciting because we're sort of tech heads. We do like our tech, but I think, you know, we also have to be careful and always remember that it's not about the product. It's not the camera that's, you know, look, yes, the camera has capabilities and features that, you know, are amazing. And, you know, 10 years ago, thinking about those things would have been, oh, no, that's never going to happen. You know, that's, you know, but ultimately, the photographer, the videographer, the person that's behind the camera is the one with the vision itself. So the cameras don't have vision. They have the capability of recording, but they don't have the vision, and that's where the person comes in. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say when you mentioned that scene, let's say going to the Dolomite Mountains with the couple, you know, like any picture that you took, it was you as a person reacting to the way they act. And then your brain react, like, it's a human process to capture certain moments, and I feel like AI will never be as good as a human to connect with other human that they're taking picture of. You know, it's just because this human part that recognizes certain move or a look, and then you react.
Exactly.
You know?
It's that,
and it's very hard to replicate in technology.
Human to human experience, you know, is something, to be honest, I hope isn't ever replicated to the point where it takes its place. We may one day eat our words, and I hope that we don't. But you know, like, it is. Events, you know, especially in events, it is we're celebrating some form of milestone, whether it's a wedding, whether it's an anniversary, you know, a life coming into the world, like, you know, all these beautiful, lovely things. I hope that any of that emotion associated with those events is never controlled or replicated by a machine. I mean, in theory and in hope, but and that's where I think photographers, from a job security point of view, will always have. You know, can you imagine a robot with a camera robot of sorts, like on wheels, just like moving around a reception, just going click, you know, click. And all the like composition information kind of embedded into their. It'll be like it'll have facial recognition. It'll have everything. It'll be like, that's the bride, that's the groom, that's the father of the bride.
That's gonna be your second shooter at some point.
Literally, show me all the photos of dad. Bang. There we go. Like, you know, that's insane.
I can't imagine that.
It's, well, given the metadata aspect of everything these days, like, it is well and truly possible.
I'm more excited about AI, I think, in editing perspective.
Yes.
Especially in like, I look at it from the videography perspective, and even now, what options we have. Like, I was blown away. This morning, I watched a video on, there's a software called DaVinci Resolve.
DaVinci Resolve, yeah, I know the one.
They just released a feature where I film you, and then I can relight the scene.
Stop it.
Yep. So the software scans the shot and kind of processes it and understands it in 3D space.
Wow.
So it understands the shape of you. If you were in 3D, understands how far the background is, how far the chair is,
and therefore the
and
intensity.
then I can place a light here, and it's gonna only affect your side of the face,
Wow.
the backlight. So like, I mean, what's
That's
What's
insane.
happening right now?
That's insane. And you know that in also in gaming generation.
Yeah.
You know, but
Meta humans. With Unreal Engine, what they're doing right now. I mean, it's scary. It's scary because someone will be able to unlock your iPhone just by placing it in front of the monitor with the Meta human. You know,
that's where that's
very basic example.
I know, but it's very possible. I mean,
and you know all the frauds. Someone will give you a video call and you won't recognize it's not a real person.
Exactly. You know, they're spamming you and they're trying to get some money out of you or whatever. And, you know, they could even, you know, with your banking security and just everything, your personal information, like, you know, just being able to imagine if I was anyone, I'd be worried about being a celebrity. You know, can you imagine the fake images of you in, you know, being represented in a questionable situation? You know, like
we had deep fake, remember?
Deep fake,
and now those photos with the Pope and Donald Trump being arrested. Donald Trump being arrested.
Yeah, well,
did you see those?
That's hopefully just
they're so realistic.
Foresight,
but they are a representation of what's gonna happen, I hope.
I mean, but hello, can I just say the Pope in Balenciaga?
So cool, man. And the way, like the posture, the way he was like walking, like a bit of a like catwalk thing going on.
He had some divine swagger, perhaps. You know,
but it looked good. You have to admit, it looked good.
He looked great. Kudos to the Pope, even if he didn't wear.
It was like a fusion of Kanye West and Pope.
Yeah, like part of me is now just imagining like the Pope behind the Vatican closed doors, just strutting his stuff in like the latest Balenciaga. That would just be
what Frank has going on right now. I mean, photography-wise, you're shooting weddings.
I am.
Is that something you're focused on and you're pushing here in Malta? And what's the plan? Are you gonna stay here?
What is the plan? What is the plan?
You're gonna stay in Malta for a bit right now?
I'm
you're in between Australia and Malta.
No. My last trip to Australia was for my best friend's wedding, and
you were shooting?
I shot it. Yeah, I did shoot it. But for now, with all going on, especially with the cost of flights, it's just insane. Malta's home for now. And Malta will be home for at least the next few years.
Foreseeable future, yeah.
Foreseeable future. I am nowhere near ticking the box of all the boxes that I want with regard to Europe. Like, I do eventually see myself moving to the mainland at some stage. Hopefully it's Hopefully it's in a chateau with 20 bedrooms, of which one will be have a nice little sign, a gold little plaque on it saying Caroles.
Oh yes. I was gonna say I would come visit, man. I've never been to France.
Look, France. Can I speak French? Absolutely not. It's the visual dream. So whether it's, you know, somewhere in Europe, but basically I know that we haven't really touched it as well, but I've now become the president of the Malta Institute of Professional Photography as
Feels
well.
Feels good to say it, eh?
I feel weird about it.
Sounds
I feel
good.
like
I'm
president.
a
I'm a president. Yeah, it does. Look, I mean, every NGO, you know, committee-based organisation needs to have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. So essentially, I have to accept the president word. But no, I'm loving it. So we have just in this year alone, you know, incorporated new courses and, spent some money on fixing the classroom and the space. And we now have a studio that is rentable, so anyone that wants to.
Is it free or paid or like subscription based?
So we have memberships. So annual so we have members essentially. The studio hire is a paid hire. However, there are discounts associated with those that are members. We have talks.
How much is the membership?
Oh, at the moment it's silly. It's silly cheap. It's only €40 per year. I know. And so
I'm not a photographer, but I might just as well, but so I can get discounts on the studio.
Exactly. And on Tuesday, last week we had a great talk from Emma Tranchett. Next week we have another talk by Lorea Castillo.
I'll put the link in the description of the podcast, so people can check it out.
The local talent in this country is phenomenal. It really is.
It just
truly
needs more exposure.
It just and just more exposure and more value. I mean, like I just hear too many times about people in our industry sort of getting the raw end of the deal, and I think that just needs to really start changing. And unfortunately, unless we actually start saying no, it's not going to happen. People are still going to just continue saying, like this whole, I'm only willing to give you X amount for this job. It should be, no. These are my rates. And this is what you're going to get. You don't go to a mechanic and say, oh, can you fix my car for €20? They're going to laugh at you and tell you to fuck off.
Go somewhere.
Yeah.
Where the sun doesn't shine.
Exactly. So why is it that when it comes to the creative world that our rates are negotiable? And they shouldn't ever be negotiable.
Because artists are...
no.
hippies and they don't need food.
Yeah, apparently we eat air. But
mushrooms and water. That's
but when you look at a city... And you whether it's Valletta or it's, Vienna, and you walk around and there's beautiful museums and architecture and sculptures and gardens and all the, and beautiful artwork, on the street. All of this ultimately derives from design and culture.
Yeah.
And who are the practitioners of those people? Of those aspects of living and community, your photographers, your illustrators, your painters, your architects, I still consider architecture to be a form of art,
Yeah.
So
I feel like artists, they just elevate the society.
Exactly. It's our job to make people think. It's our job to make people like pretty things.
To feel. A lot of times.
It's a very underrated industry overall, I think.
Okay.
Because the results may not necessarily be tangible.
Yeah, but I know what you mean, and what I'm trying to say is that I think in Malta a lot of people need to learn how to appreciate things that are not tangible. And there you might not necessarily even be able to touch it. It's something like maybe you see or even like music, you hear it and it makes you feel a certain way,
exactly.
And people need to learn to appreciate it, I guess.
Exactly. Imagine a life without music.
Oh. Impossible. Cool, man. Music is a thing. It's like water. I don't know. I can't imagine life without music. No. And I know some people that don't really need music in their life, and I'm like, I don't know who you
understand.
are.
It's like someone that doesn't own a passport. I'm just like, you're not my person. I don't. We don't really have common.
It's weird. I can understand it, but at the same time, it's like, how do you like?
Yeah.
Because music, I don't know. To me, it gives energy, and I feel like most people.
It
kind
tugs on the heartstrings.
Charges you up, you know. But yes, man, thank you so much. We're gonna wrap this up.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It was really fun to talk to you, and I know we drifted off a bit a few times, but
ADHD, I'm doing that.
exactly, yeah. But I really appreciate that you came, and I'm really glad we met by accident completely. You know, shooting a wedding.
Yeah,
I think that was the first time we met. I think
that was,
and I remember the wedding. It was in Melilla, that villa that was rented overlooking the church of Melilla, I think. It was
yes, the English couple.
Yes. And that was the first time we met. And I don't know, with some people, with you and with Mitchell, we just clicked instantly. And it still amazes me to this day when it happens in life. Because a lot of people you meet and you're like, hi, you know, like you're working together, but that's it.
Yeah.
And with some people, there's this thing that I don't even know how to describe, that I wouldn't say you become instant friends, but there's something that you have in common, maybe similar sense of humor, you know.
Absolutely.
Maybe a bit of a black humor jokes.
Totally.
I'm not talking about black people, it's black humor.
No, dark humor.
Yeah, dark humor. Yeah, exactly.
Dark humor. Yeah. Oh, I love dark humor.
But something like that happens, and I love it, man. Like when I meet people like that, same happened with Mitchell, you know, we clicked instantly.
Yeah.
And we still need to go for drinks, because Mitchell proposed we go at some point.
Oh, it's going to get messy.
Good. I don't get messy that often anymore.
No, I'm talking about Mitch.
Okay. But then there's two people to carry him, so it's okay.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah.
Cool, man. Thanks
man.
so much.
Thank you so much. Ciao.
Ciao.